Saying that World War II totally changed the world consistently seems like either a huge modest representation of the truth of the whole conflict. In any case, the basic certainty is that the war truly changed everything, including the presentation of another mechanical age. As we approach the 74th commemoration of the end of the war, the contention keeps on affecting the manner in which that we live, and in more ways than one may anticipate. One of the most mind-blowing things is that such a large number of our cutting-edge developments and lifestyle have their immediate inceptions in the war. Just as being a horrendous period, displaying the most exceedingly awful of humankind, it pushed and created developments at a rate that has never been risen to.
While the creations and mechanical enhancements of this war can never be supported against the shocking death toll, World War II totally molded the innovative world that we live in now. Without this contention, we essentially would not approach a wide scope of innovation that we use every day. With the war incorporating immense lumps of the globe, the stakes were staggeringly high. It's against this background governments put holes of cash into technology to assist them with winning the war. World War II saw ventures being greenlit that in peacetime wouldn't have gotten off the ground. It additionally made individuals think in a totally unique manner, making creations that essentially wouldn't have occurred at a similar pace in peacetime. While a definitive point of any examination was to discover better methods for wrecking the foe, post-war developments have demonstrated similarly as compelling at improving lives.
The utilization of radio waves to recognize objects past the scope of sight was first formed into a handy innovation by British researchers and architects during the 1930s. This new hardware, known as radar or radio detection and ranging, would assume a significant job during the Second World War and in resulting clashes. Radio waves are utilized to distinguish an object at a distance by transmitting a burst of radio energy and estimating the time it takes for the reverberation, brought about by hitting the object to reflect back to the recipient. The height and bearing, or direction of flight, of targets can likewise be distinguished. By the episode of the Second World War in 1939, a chain of early warning radar stations called Chain Home or CH stations had just been worked along the south and east shorelines of Britain. Radar could get approaching enemy aircraft at a scope of 80 miles and played a critical job in the Battle of Britain by giving air protection's early cautioning of German assaults.
The cavity magnetron is a microwave transmitter presently used in microwaves to warm food. The cutting-edge cavity magnetron was made by John Randall and Harry Booth in 1940 at the University of Birmingham. With Britain not having enough cash to mass produce, a working example was sent to the United States, where the Bell Telephone Laboratories made an adaptation that could be fabricated. With this innovation, the Allies had a monstrous bit of leeway over the Axis. One of the key favorable circumstances was that the radar could now be small enough to introduce on planes. In spite of the fact that the cavity magnetron truly lives inside of microwaves, it kick-started the present-day era of radars. Radars are presently used in a large number of ways, from military to regular citizens. It's utilized in avionics to help pilots avoid obstacles and to give precise height readings. In maritime use, to assist ships with avoiding crashes with different boats. It's even utilized less frequently by the police to identify the speed of vehicles.
Discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928, it wasn't until 1939 that Howard Florey and a team of researchers showed the potential of penicillin, and it was during the war that the antibiotic gained its popularity. In 1943, the U.S. War Production Board came up with a plan for the mass distribution of penicillin to Allied troops fighting in Europe. By 1944, the U.S. had produced over 2.3 million doses, and the medicine is credited with saving an estimated 12 to 15% of casualties. The discovery of penicillin changed the world of medicine enormously. With its development, infections that were previously severe and often fatal, like bacterial endocarditis, bacterial meningitis, and pneumonia, could easily be treated.
At the outbreak of World War II, German experimenter Werner von Braun and others had already started working towards rockets for space exploration. The German government began supporting rocket research in 1932, believing rockets could be used as weapons, and by 1941, German scientists were testing a missile called Vengeance Version 1. The craft could be seen flying at low altitudes from a distance of many miles, but they were also so fast that anti-aircraft guns could rarely hit them. There was no safeguard, be that as it may, from the Germans' other rocket framework, the version 2. This fluid-energized rocket had a more drawn but outrange and more noteworthy payload than the version 1. Moreover, it voyaged a lot like an advanced rocket dispatch, flying about straight up, reaching the border of space, and at that point, falling almost straight down at speeds quicker than sound. At the time, there was no real way to stop such a rocket or even distinguish its methodology. Starting in September 1944, the Germans set a large number of these rockets towards an assortment of targets. However, most were aimed at Antwerp, Belgium, and London. The version 1 and version 2 rockets were not precise. However, they had a threatening impact on non-military personnel populaces, which was a piece of German procedure.
Initially called the Defense Forces Canister, the Jerrycan was grown subtly in pre-war Germany. Its motivation was to fill in as a portable fuel compartment for the military. By 1939, Germans had thousands of such cans stored fully, expecting a war. The Americans were interested by the can's design and managed to smuggle one to the U.S. Back home, the structure was figured out before long entered the Allied forces' provisions. In Europe alone, the U.S. Army utilized more than 19 million jerrycans during the war. Indeed, even President Roosevelt remarked, quote, "Without these cans, it would have been impossible for our armies to cut their way across France at a lightning pace, which exceeded the German blitzkrieg of 1940." Close quote. The jerrycan is quick for a few significant reasons. Its three handles imply that the container can easily be carried by one person or two people. Also, the dented surface on the can provides durability and enables its substance to extend. An air pocket under the handles, a cam lever release mechanism, and a short spout with an air pipe to the air pocket allows even a precise pouring. Much better than previous cans that were, above all, easy to puncture.
Pressurized lodges are a fundamental component of business flying. The process of pumping conditioned air into the cabin of an aircraft is essential for staying away from an entire rundown of physical and mental issues: hypoxia, low level of oxygen in blood, altitude sickness, decompression sickness, and bar trauma. Just to give a few examples. If not for this, only a few would really pay cash to venture to every part of the skies. The higher you fly, the higher the pressure. Towards the start of the 20th century, the planes were arriving at ever higher heights, and this became a significant issue. During the 1920s, as pilots endured physical injury, there were various ineffective endeavors to pressurize their cabins. The main thing the industry had the option to viably think of were breathing devices, yet those came to the detriment of opportunity of development, tended to malfunction, and couldn't take care of issues, for example, heart growth that few pilots were encountering. War endeavors multiplied the attempts at building a pressurized plane. Accordingly, in 1944, Boeing found out how to manufacture the B-29 Superfortress, the plane with pressurized nose and cockpit. Following the finish of the war, this accomplishment extended to commercial planes.
Despite the fact that plane jet engines had been effectively tried in Britain as ahead of schedule as 1937, it wasn't until 1944 that they really found their purpose in battle. Up to that point, equivalently flimsier propeller-controlled military aircraft used to be the standard norm. Since the British government wasn't generally keen on building up to this innovation, the venture slowed down. At that point, in 1944, the Germans got it and assembled the Messerschmitt Me-262. Its speed and power outmatched whatever at any point flew. Other than Me-262, the Germans made the Arado AR-234 jet-fueled plane, the last adversary plane to fly over England in World War II. Further experiments on jet engines ushered a new era of powerful air warfare.
No doubt, World War II played a critical role in the industrialization of many of the nations around the world, on which every military greatly relied. As a result, incredible advancements in technology, necessitated by the advancements of the enemy, were witnessed throughout World War II.